right now. So the Zoom call is going to be recorded. I just want to thank everybody for taking the time to come today. This is with Inclusivity Committee with Student Government Association and partner with the Wise Women's Center. And it's also our project for Black History Month Festival. Just a little plug right quick. If you have time to go inside the Student Life Center, we have 2 art exhibits that are up. I think we might have welcome baskets still available. And we also have a scavenger hunt going on today and tomorrow, where there'll be 2 prize winners that could win a self-care basket. Just to let everyone know the rules of everything before we start, mics are to be muted until you're called upon. We will have an open forum after every question for everyone to take part in the discussion as well. And that the chat moderator is going to make a note and call upon you or any questions that are inside the chat during our open forum as well. Cameras are not required to be on or off. That's just how you're feeling and comfortable with. Just to let everyone aware, we have 4 questions for today. They're going to run about 5 to 10 minutes each, no more than 5 minutes. And also just to let everyone aware, when we have 1 minute remaining, I'm going to change the screen. I didn't mean to do that. But when there's 1 minute remaining, as soon as Zoom wants to open it, there we go. So I'm going to change the screen to red just like this to let everyone know. And I'm going to let you know that there's 1 minute remaining for open discussion or for the guest panelists to answer their questions. So Miss Amy is going to be posting the 4 questions inside the chat, and I'm going to go ahead and introduce our 3 guest panelists. So we have 3 guest panelists today in no particular order. We have Ms. Dashika Davis. She is a native New Orleans and comes with years of teaching experience. Ms. Davis received her bachelor's degree in criminal justice psychology and went on to get her master's degree in criminal justice as well. She is certified in crisis prevention and management. The second guest we have is Mr. Kenyon Jackson. Kenyon received a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from Southern University in New Orleans. In May 1998, he received a Master of Arts in History and 18 hours extra in Political Science from Southern University in Baton Rouge in July 2005. Tronn Moller is our 3rd guest, and he has been teaching history at Delgado Community College for 16 years and consulting for over 25 years. The story of human resilience fascinates him, and he is passionate about learning best practices in the marketplace and utilizing them to transform leaders and organizations. So we're going to go ahead and get started with our first question, and I will also let you guys know when there's 1 minute remaining for those questions. So our first question is, what does Black History Month mean to you? And any of our guest panelists can go first as they see fit.
Well, I'll go first. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. For me, Black history means more so the appreciation and the acknowledgement of Blackness, how it permeates all aspects of society. Black history is the recognition of our people and, of course, our culture. It is celebrated, amongst so many, in particular, Black men, Black women, Caucasians, all ethnicities from what I've seen, be it, homosexual, heterosexual, bisexual, non-binary, trans, disabled, etc. And it is also, a reminder that the level of reverence shown during this month should be consistent the entire year. It is also, a call to action to continue to advocate for and to uplift those within our society, who is often pushed to the margins. And so Black History Month is extremely, important, not only to myself, but to my 2 adult children and to, family and friends and also, my fellow colleagues. So I'm so excited, that coming on board at Delgado Community College a couple of weeks ago, that I was invited to this panel. So it is truly important and significant. Thank you.
Well, I guess I go second. Thank you. Black History Month means to me is basically what you're seeing as a struggle of people and the productivity of a people, group of people in American history. When you see American history, you see about Black Americans and how from 1619, even from beyond and all the way to the present, you see exactly the struggle, the productivity, the understanding, and the continued struggle what Black Americans have had in the United States. And not only that, that it's a very, very important month in the sense that you understand if, yes, Black history is American history, but you also see a group of people who productive and gave blood, sweat, and tears in America. And this is what the product and what you see exactly what Black History Month means to me.
So is it okay for me just to say ditto to both of those answers and copy both of those answers? Is that okay? So what Black History Month means to me, I think it's a great question, and welcome to everyone. And thank you for this opportunity to be able to be in the panel and to be able to share this month. Black History Month, kind of tell it in a form of a story. And so my family is from Iowa, and in the 1970s and the 1980s, my grandmother was one of the first people to be able to take African American history and begin taking it to schools in and across Iowa. And so she would start off doing the historical stuff, doing all the dancing, the drums. She would go through and do all of those things. And then what she would allow me to be able to close. So if you're talking about 1977, 78, around that time, you're talking about in Iowa, a young African-American male who's now been able to get up and dance after they're talking about the African-Americans to those who predominantly white schools and white students in Iowa. We were a few chocolate chips and a bowl of buttermilk, as we would say it. But what did it mean? It meant for me, in terms of not just that month, but it meant the whole year. I was vast in African American history. I was vast in the experience, and so it means everything. It defined my identity, and it defines people's identity, and begins to give them a place and a space, in time, so they can look at that, look at what was, then grab onto what was in the current, in the midst of the right now, so they can move forward to the tomorrow. And so that's what Black History Month means to me in terms of February. January looked at last year, began to look at this year, but February began to set the bar and sets the standard up high so that we can begin to, okay, I'm grounded and rooted in this for the rest of the year. So when I move through, right, that whole resilience piece, I'm moving through this month, I have something to grab back onto that was lifted up for me in February. Is the reason that's what Black History means to me. I'll say this and I'll stop. It's kind of like, it's like, as Cornel West says, it's kind of like jazz, right? He says in jazz, you have the different instruments, and the different instruments, you're playing those different instruments. And then all of a sudden, he says, all of you are in tune, you're moving together. But then he says, at one point, the drum begins to be lifted up, and the drum begins to play and begins to be highlighted, and then it goes back down. Then the trumpet goes up, and it goes back down. So Black History Month does that for me. It's like playing jazz. You lift that up, and you lift Black history up, and let the world see it, and then you blend it back in, but not as a man of forgetfulness, but that it resonates with us, resonates with the whole entire America and the rest of the world through the rest of the month, or through the rest of the year, 11 months of the year. So that's what Black History Month means to me. But Black History Month, Black History Year, but Black History existence is what it's really all about.
Amen.
Come on.
Did any of our guest panels have anything to add before we open the forum? All right, guys, so we're going to go ahead and open the forum. We actually have 10 minutes that we can spend on this. So if anyone has any questions or comments or concerns that they want to add into the discussion, now is the time to do so.
Hi, this is Dee Shedrick. I don't know if it's a statement or a question, but I don't know how many people remember Melanie Daffendahl. Of course, most people remember Melanie Daffendahl, and she was the director of the Women's Center. And, she was a sociology teacher as well. And we used to have a lot of discussions. And one of the discussions we had was about Black History Month. And it was really funny because she was telling me once that she went to this kind of Black history trivia thing, and she was the only one answering all of the questions. The Black people that were there weren't even answering the questions, and she knew all the answers. And that's just the kind of woman she was. And so one of the things that we talked about was someone told her that and they were, white American, that why do we have to have Black History Month, or, Women's Month, or, Latino History Month, or whatever. And she answered the question, because she would. And, she was saying we have to have Black History Month, and all of the reasons she said. And so I guess I wanted to pose that question, like some other people may feel like, well, we don't have White History Month, like, but we have Black History Month, like, why can't we have History Month? And I'm not saying, that could be the only group, but I just wanted to hear from you guys. I know why we have Black History Month, right? But what are your thoughts on why it's so necessary or not?
For me, that is a great question that you pose. It's almost goes hand in hand with Black Lives Matter, and why not everyone life, matter, right? And so for me, I think Black History Month, is recognized, because of the brutality that our ancestors, endured. It was just so much, and and it's just really, really chilling to witness and to go back into our history and view just so much of what they endured. And so I think that it's, to me, it's so much more mostly profound to be recognized. And that's my opinion and take on it.
And I would like to add on to that too, that that's what's the purpose of Black History Month. You definitely need Black History Month in the sense that this is about today's society and what we live in right now, today. The society that we live in, to understand Black history. People have to understand, a group of people, I'm sure you've always heard this, if you don't know where you're coming from or where you've been, hey, well, how you know where you're gonna go? So ultimately is that understand society itself today. I'm sure myself and Tronn, we have had many students in our class who just didn't know some of the basic things of Black history. Let's even go past 1619, past that, about the Western African societies, the West African kingdoms, and then from there, continue on. So a lot of times, when you talk about Black history, people often comes in mind of 2 or 3 things. It's out of slavery, civil war, civil rights, which they have to understand Black history is a lot more than just that. So that's one thing I think, another reason that Black history is very, very important, and especially in today's society, because if you don't understand a group of people, how you expect to love, to grow, and to understand, and to get better communication with a group of one another.
Yeah, Deirdre, thank you for lifting that. You lift up my girl's name, Melanie. We would have some very similar conversations, but because we were talking about the Women's Center, and then we would talk about the womanist movement, right? And so the womanist movement, and so in that conversation, in the spirit of her, one of the things that history is written from the victor. And history is written from those who won, right? And so one of the reasons that we lift up Black history is in terms of is that those stories and those narratives of people who did not win, right? Nor did they win, or they did not write those books, so they weren't in the so now we have to lift up those stories so that we can now show you how they now had resilience during this time. And so with Melanie, when we would talk about the womenness, right? We would talk about the story of the women, of African-American women who now made it through, as Dr. Dwight Franklin said, they had the funk and the thing, right? The funk and the thing in order for them to be able to get through. But if we never lift that up, if we never show them, then they can never hear about the funk and the thing that women have now gone through. And the long line of history of Harriet Tubman, the long, the long history of how she sustained, the long of Oprah Winfrey, all those stories of how they made that through is why we lift it up, so they can know that, oh, I can get through that too. The funk and the thing that they had, I have the funk and the thing that I can get through that and make it through and be resilient too, So thank you for lifting her up. Yeah.
Good question. I have a question for the panel. Madam Moderator.
Yeah, would you mind holding it for the end of the next one, because we have 20 seconds left for the open discussion.
Certainly.
Okay. All right. Miss Amy, would you mind noting that so that he can go first? We're going to go ahead and go with the second question. So the second question is, what do you think is the most profound moment in African-American history in the United States? And how did you choose this moment?
Yeah, one of those moments for me, I think I want to bring it in terms of a more current moment, was the election night of Barack Obama. When it was that moment when they won, and they showed the pictures of them, and then you saw them walk on stage, right? You saw them walk on stage, and so that whole capturing moment, I'm highlighting that night for a reason, because when you walk on that, you lifted up. Here it is. You lifted up Black excellence, and you also lifted up this whole thing, this Black family, right? This Black excellence and this Black family. And then you saw them walk out in their own way, right? And you saw them greet, you saw them say hello, you saw them. But the other moment in that the other moment that I think was a very powerful moment was it was a sign to America. It was a sign to Black folks. It was a sign in such a way that, like, look at this, Harvard grad, Princeton, right? They can make it, they can do it, community organizing from the ground, from the grass. But this next powerful moment, the transitional moment, was to look at Jesse Jackson crying. The tears on Jesse Jackson's face and them walking into that said it all. It was something to see all them walk out. You see Barack Obama walk out, and he's got this amazing thing that when he walks, he still has that glide. He never left that glide, even though that's what I love. That's one of the most powerful moments, and why for me.
Very, very good. Good. For me, I would say one of the most powerful moments in Black American history or Black history, I have to say, is maybe the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Definitely. I think that put up Black Americans on a path to political power, in a sense, because majority of Black population is in the South. So ultimately, I think that in itself ultimately helped Black Americans in many ways. Now, granted, sometimes we don't do what we're supposed to do and go vote for those, especially in local elections. I'm really talking about local and state elections. That ultimately would change your government, how your government and how your community is actually run. So I think most importantly is that the Voting Rights of 1965 is a very important moment. It gives you the ordinary citizen, a hand in choosing who their leader is and what their future is. Pretty much that's what it is. Give you a chance and ultimately give you exactly what your future is or how you can handle any of that. But also there's many powerful moments, but I also agree with Tronn, definitely the election of President Barack Obama. But definitely, I think the Voting Rights of 1965 was definitely one of the most powerful ones. And if you understand the history of how that vote came to be, or that power came to be, that in itself also you will say to yourself, wow, we did that. Yes, we did it. So ultimately, I think that's very, very important.
Awesome. I see that my fellow panelists, they spoke on those powerful moments and profound moments. But when I, define and think about profound, in my mind, what I think about is the senseless killing of Emmett Till. To me, that was, profound. It was the catalyst for the movement itself.
Yeah.
Yet for years,
Yes,
it went unnoticed and almost wiped from the minds of many. It is ever more profound today, as we watch that same brutality being used on our people by those hired to protect and serve. There are so many profound moments, in our history that we are forbidden to discuss, or even remember. Because it can, inflate, anxiety, so many, negative thoughts in our minds, and still, in many ways, we are still suffering, at the hands, of the oppressor. And so I believe, like, the Emmett Till is something that, is, a powerful moment and like profound, in our history.
You're on mute.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm going to open the forum for questions again. We have about 11 minutes for that. And I'm going to go back to Frank Payne. He had a question earlier.
Thank you for coming back. For the panel, I have just a two-part question. It's very difficult to discuss African-American history in America without there being some sort of almost animosity associated with African-American history. As a professor of political science myself, being involved at the level that I am, my question is two-part. One part is, from an intellectual perspective, why is African-American Black History Month still important? And tell me the significant difference in those of us who work on the college level, this issue of critical race theory. We're going to get into it. There has to be a discussion, an intellectual discussion to our less learned individuals about what critical race theory is and how we relate it to the actual teaching of history, first at the collegiate level, and this misnomer that is taught in K through 12 as a regular part of curriculum. I'm going to leave that open if I've made my question clear to you, Mr. Moller. I see you smile.
Yeah, I knew that question was coming. So the way I'm understanding your question, thank you, Mr. Payne, for that, for those questions. So where I'm understanding your question is two-part, right? Is one is, how does critical race theory play into this, and then the importance of African American history? It might clarify if I'm making sure I'm understanding your question, right? Yep. And so for us, what is critical race theory? Let's undo that term. Critical race theory is a way of understanding how American racism has shaped public policy. It comes from right 1970s, the critical race theory, in terms of a framework that you had these scholars began to develop, among others. And what it is basically, it's looking at race, asking critical questions about race, development of race and racism, and then how it shaped public policy and how public policy now impacts, impacts the rest of the world. It impacts in terms of being of American racism. That's the baseline of what it is. And so when at least I not get electoral but just keep it so that we're just kind of understanding it. And so what that basically, the behind the scene thing is those that begin to ask questions. In critical theory, talking about you're asking questions about race and racism in this country, and then how it shapes, right? And how that's the baseline of it. And so what they're doing is saying that these prejudices are now what impacted policy. And what the lift up of it now is saying critical race theory is not good is very interesting, because you're telling me now not to be critical about what has happened in American history and now what has not shaped public policy. Well, hold up. What do you mean you don't want me to be able to critique what has happened and the results of the public policy that come about of it, that become about it, right? My role in academia and my role as a human is to be able to question things, and particularly as African Americans, to be able to question things. One, that's what my brain does, is question things. It scans the surface to be able to question things and to be able to, it can be able to solve it. But now you're now telling me to not dig back into American racism and not critique it. And which becomes very, very interesting in the fact that the same people who would want the statues to be able to stay up are the same people saying don't do critical race theory.
I would like to add one more thing to that, because you did very well. Not only race, but the laws that was put in place. The laws that were put in place to keep the oppression, keep racism, keep going. That's one thing you have to understand, is that the laws, look at race and the laws, protecting the laws that continue the race, about how ultimately Black Americans, from the Jim Crow laws to the laws of Virginia during that period of time, to all even to the laws now that we have, and to the civil rights laws, to all the laws that we're talking about, in a sense, the laws and what put in place to keep Black Americans in a certain place or area, so where growth and productivity It's very hard, or in some cases impossible to do. But you have to look at that. What happened in 1950 or 1960 or 1940? What happened through the law, through the eyes of the law, and looking at that and see how it progressed and what effects it had on the community? Because yeah, we can say racism, absolutely, but if you look at the laws of it, what the laws were put in place, that in itself actually had a huge effect on Black Americans, a very, very huge effect among Black Americans. And I'm not talking about one generation, I'm talking about two generations. That in essence is also a thing of critical race too. You have to look at the laws that was put in place. Because you got to remember, it's only what, I don't want to tell my age, maybe 50, 60 years ago that certain individuals and a community group of Black folks couldn't do certain things. You have grandparents, and you have parents.
I attended a segregated kindergarten in 1969 in South Carolina. Schools were integrated in South Carolina in 1967. So when we talk about this issue of its ancient history,
right?
I'm 50, I'll be 58. It's not ancient history.
It's not.
And I think the issue here, when it comes down to the panel, and I'm not taking any time away, is some of us don't want the truth about real history to be told. Because I've had my friends who are not the same melatonin as I am tell me, Frank, you're not supposed to make people feel bad about history, but history was designed not to make you feel good, but to teach you something. And if we don't learn anything, these same issues will always crop up. That's why we can't move forward sometimes.
Yeah, but Mr. Payne, can I add right on? So the shaping of public policy as it relates to race comes out of their belief systems, right? It comes out of your belief system. So if your belief system is those feeling of you feeling secure or you feeling insecure. So here it is, you had those policies are shaped in order to be able to make sure that people feel secure and make sure they have the right in order to be able to advance. And so their advancement means the non-advancement of other people. So I have to shape a policy for my insecurity, right, and for my protection, for my existence of my own people. That's what that is. So when you're saying I don't want to do critical race theory, is what you're saying is I don't want them to be critical on the fact that I now have insecurities and that my own self-sustainability is challenged. And so therefore, I don't want you to critique it, nor if I want you to raise questions about my own sustainability. Come on now.
Exactly, Frank. And I too, am in agreement with your statement as to why, it can be discussed, amongst, my other counterparts or, or among, other ethnicities. Why, am I forbidden to discuss those things? Why can't I, but I can't remember those things, happening. Even when I think about, I think I recently had a conversation about the complete devastation, of Black Wall Street and how a thriving Black community that was cleared and now known as Central Park, New York. Why, can't I bring up those kind of discussions? And when I brought that up, I was like, oh girl, why are you bringing that up? Because I think it should be talked about. I'm trying to have more of an open dialogue with you, not only as my friend, but I want to toggle your brain, or what have you. Why can't we have these kind of open discussions? Why can't, I relive, my history? Because in fact, it is still there. It's still prevalent today.
All right, Mr. Matt, I'm going to get you at the next open forum after the third question, if that's okay with you. I saw your hands been raised for a second.
No worries. Yeah.
All right, no problem. So for our third question is going to be African Americans in the United States have overcome countless struggles and obstacles throughout U.S. history. What challenges do Black people in our nation face today?
When speaking on what Kenya mentioned about the laws and things that, we've had in place, many, many years, ago until now. I mean, yes, during that time in our African-American history, we had the Civil Rights Act, right? But has it really changed? Has it really changed? Our inner city schools lack resources, neighborhoods lack funding. It's a struggle to get a decent grocery store. Instead of liquor stores on every corner. I know I'm from, District E, the Ninth Ward. I mean, I say the Ninth Ward, but New Orleans East, that lack of nutrition when there, is a fast food restaurant on every main street, et cetera. So I think, yes, it's still, prevalent today, no matter what laws, have been passed. And it's really, truly, unfortunate that it's like that. I have a fellow colleague, former colleague of mine who I worked with is, she's African American and, trying to open up a grocery store in Uptown New Orleans. And it's been taking so long for her to get, passed. And we're still, having those same barriers, today, as it was, 50 and 60 years past.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think also, and I think you definitely touch on this, Ms. Davis, is that the economic inequality. I think that's a big thing, the economic inequality. It is truly amazing when you look at our statistics and everything that funding that we've seen is that the amount of economic inequality in America among Black Americans, about minority period in the United States, it's just truly outrageous when you think about it and look at it. As a history teacher, and oftentimes I know Tronn teaches also, is that we look at Black bankers, economics, money from 1930s to the 1940s. Matter of fact, 1920s, you're starting to see how Blacks began to own banks. There's about 30, 40 Black-owned banks and corporations actually in America. And then when the Great Depression happens, yes, we know that ultimately declined. But however, the point of it is that ultimately is that when it comes to economic inequality in America, you can see that Blacks nearly last the list. So the question you have is, how do we fix that? How do we actually bring that up? Yeah, we can say laws and government, but also I think that there has to be some type of monetary funding, some type of oversee and overlook. When these banks get in trouble, especially what happened in 2008, when those banks got into trouble with those banks got in trouble, that money came from somewhere. So ultimately, you have to think about exactly how ultimately that Black banks, where was their funding, where was their sharing? But nobody even thinks about that sometimes. But ultimately, I think it's economic inequality that I think is definitely facing Black Americans and the family also. I have to say Black Americans and the family. The Black family, absolutely, still struggling, absolutely. So I think those are two. I'm gonna put two. I know you asked for one, but I'm gonna put two. Those two, absolutely. I think that's some of the challenges we are facing, especially in today's society.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. J, Ms. Davis. How do African Americans overcome the struggles and obstacles today? I think I want to start on a very individual basis. I think African Americans must look at not get caught up in the individualism, right? And not get caught up in thinking that I am here and on this island by myself, but understand that they're part of a collective group. One of the things that we talked to, in John Mbedi's book, African Religions, he talked about individual. He says one of the keys in terms of the African bodies is understanding the connection between their individualism and their collectiveness. He says, like for instance, my name is Tronn, that's my individualism, but Moller is my last name. I belong to a bigger collective. And so how does my individualism now connect to my collectiveness of a bigger of the Moller family? But even beyond that, how does it connect to, in terms of, I live in the city of New Orleans. I'm a part of the state of Louisiana, I'm a part of the United States, and how my gifts and my purpose now connect to all of those things. So yes, I have my individual identity, but I'm also part of a collective. So part of my role is being able to navigate through me being an individual, navigate through me being, how can we say it, letting my ego run everything, right? Letting my ego run. And so how do I navigate that as a means to be able to survive and then now move forward, because I'm a part of something that is bigger than me. So getting beyond that is just me. It's just me. I'm gonna make it on my own. I'm gonna do it on my own. No, you can't. The statistics say that the African American community is on track to this generation of African Americans are on track to make less money than their families or people they had it before. But you have more access, but you're on track to make less money than you've been able to have before. And so the feed into that is the more you feed into your individualism and not begin to see your collectivism and operate in collectivism, then you're going to live in that. We're going to live in that statistic of you not being able to make more money or maybe or even have more access than your family members you had before. So I think working through that, right? Connecting to that, working through that belief system that I'm here by myself, I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna get out here and hustle and just do it by myself. It don't work like that.
All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and open the forum. We have 11 minutes for that. And before I do, I just wanted to talk about a comment Destiny Boudreaux said in regards to the question of challenges Black people in our nation face today. And she said that the ongoing racism, poverty, being singled out, having to do without, and being less than without, and police brutality are some of the struggles she thinks that Black and African Americans face today. And I'm going to also bring it back to Mr. Matt Ward.
Yeah, I would love to I hope I articulate this properly, but I would love to address this idea of Black excellence. I think I'm very proud to be Black, obviously, and it's going back to what we were talking about, profound moments in African-American history. I think that a lot of us internalize this idea of Black excellence, meaning that I feel that often we feel that we're not entitled to humanity and respect unless we're achieving at the highest levels. And I would love to hear your thoughts on like how we can take pride in achieving, but also knowing that we are worthy of respect, whether or not we're extraordinarily gifted at something, you know, or how much money and capital we can amass and those types of things. Because Black people are excellent, Black people are excellent in just being, and they don't have to be Beyonce to receive respect. I hope I'm articulating that. I would love to get everyone's thoughts.
Yep. Somebody else want to jump in first? Because I'll talk. You know, I know I lifted that term up. I know I lifted that term up, but I'll let someone go first, and then I'll back in.
Thank you, bro. I'll go in and talk a little bit. Black excellence. First of all, let us say that all our children are excellent children and beautiful children. Let's first say that. Second thing is that education is a gateway, in a sense, to get out of poverty, but also just to educate your mind about who you are and what you want to do and how what you like to have your life lived. Black excellence, it's also me. Also, without it, America would not be America, plain and simple, what you see now. Believe it or not, once again, I keep going back to history, but if you've seen all the things that we have done and created and to help and contribute to this country, you'll be very proud of Black excellence. So when people talk about, you know, we shouldn't have Black excellence or have, you know, we shouldn't be what they sometimes call acting white in some sense, whatever that means. That is falsehood in a sense, very, very light falsehood. One thing we need to always do is lift each other up. That's the most important thing, lift each other up every day. You know, so I think to answer your question about Black excellence, it's a non-brainer for me. It's very, very important, you know, always.
Exactly, Kenya. And great question, Matt. For me, you know, Black excellence, you know, of course, you know, is someone, you know, who portrays great qualities. So what great qualities do you possess? I mean, for me, I possess a lot of great qualities. One, it begins with my smile, right?
Hey.
And so that's a great quality that, you know, I think I have, because if someone see you're smiling, they're like, oh, she's going to bring some great energy, right?
Yeah.
And in addition to that, you know, yeah, you do mention Beyonce, and I've never met the young lady, but I do believe, you know, she is my sister, right? And she's great, but I also believe that I can stand next to her, and I'm also just as great as she is. No, I may not, you know how to sing, or, you know, I may not know how to feel, the Superdome or anything like that. But, you know, hey, I do, you know, I have, you know, I'm a Black mom, and my son is almost 22 and he's a Black young man. My daughter is 18. She attends Loyola. So she's great. So all of that is Black excellence to me. I am, in addition to that, I own an LGBTQ club. You know, I co-own that with my best friend, who's the owner. So that's Black excellence. Supporting Black businesses, promoting Black businesses is important. All of those things are great qualities that you know that I'm sure that you have, that you can also possess. You know, recognizing Black innovators, you know, is Black excellence. And I think that's just great. And what differentiates you from somebody else? What is your quality that you can bring to the table, that you can be able to say, hey, dang, I saw what Matt did, and oh wow, I wonder where he got that thought from. How can I be of more of service? Such as Matt. Or just to bring individualized qualities to myself. Maybe is it volunteering more? Maybe it's going on when we finish this panel, hey, I was just on this panel, and let me tell you what happened. Let me share some things with you. That'll be a great quality. To me, that is Black excellence.
Yeah, and I'm right with them. Black excellence is being Black and your essence. That's who you are, right? When people, it's very interesting that when people say, oh, I don't see Black or white. No. My Blackness is a reality. It's a physical reality, right? So my Black excellence is my attempt in order to be able to perform a task the best way that I can, right? And bringing my full self forward, not perfection, trying to be right, but as I am the best person of who I am at this moment, bringing myself forward. Black excellence is the fact that I'm not superior to no one else, but I'm walking in who I am during this moment. I'll give an example. Me and my son, my wife, we took our kids to a basketball game, Brother Martin and St. Aug basketball game, and last week, and it was 2 weeks ago. And we were sitting around, and so I'm a Xavier grad, my wife's a Xavier grad, and we were sitting around those who were Xavier grads, and we had our kids with us, and everyone had our kids with us. And and this is not elitist. But what I'm saying is that all of us were Xavier grads, professors in college, directors in corporate America, Fortune 100, doctors, lawyers, right? That's Black excellence. So our kids are sitting around it, looking at it, but not really fully grabbing it, but at some point they will. Because we're just the best who we were at that moment, and our Blackness is a physical reality. We're not perfect, but we're the best of who we're gonna be at this moment. That's Black excellence.
All right, so before we get to our next question, I will get to you, Melvin, and Ms. Abel. I will also get to you in our next open forum, but just to state some comments that was posted during our question in regards to what challenges do Black people face in our nation today. Not Christopher Thomas, Liz and Gordon said that the socio-psychological ramifications of being oppressed and whitewashed standards of beauty. And someone else followed up with that, saying that based on whitewash, America is disgusting. And I'm going to ask your question in the next one if we have time. And on the flip side of that, Christopher Thomas also noted that a lot of African American students are attending school now and also graduating from high school. So that's like a plus of the things that we have available now. So our last question we have today is that the burden of explaining Black history often falls on Black students. How do you think the school board could restructure American history to include a more accurate Black history and perspective that shows the whole truth that America faced from the beginning?
If I understand the question correct, basically you're asking, and please correct me if I'm wrong, how Black history can be more accurate and Black in perspective and show how Blacks actually contribute to American history. One thing and throughout most Black history books, one thing I've always noticed is that we talk a lot about our civil rights leaders. We talk a lot about, people who have joined the military, quite a few people joined the military, Black Americans, and that aspect of it. One way I think that would get everybody closer in understanding and also be very effective and understand what Black Americans have contributed is we need to talk more about, and I think someone said this or someone mentioned this, about Black inventors, about our Black pioneers, about Blacks who actually have, who invented what and who did what. You'd be truly amazed and understand who did what and when they did it. And not only that, that ultimately through the struggle, through the being productive through our Black history, Black folks did a lot of these things. I think that will very, very help people understand and give people a sense of how Black Americans are clever, smart, inventors, engineers, all these things. I think that ultimately, if we can have our schools, and when I'm talking about schools, I'm not talking about college, I'm talking about high school and the middle school, focus on those things. Absolutely. Frederick Douglass is a very, very important person. Absolutely. Frederick Douglass, Booker T. Washington, Malcolm X, very, very important persons. But a lot of times we look at them as our political leaders, which is true. Absolutely. But I think if we look at mostly also the Black inventors, the Black bankers, Maggie Walker from Virginia, Jesse Bangs from Richmond. So if we look at some of those people and put them in our history books, you'll see, says, wow, I didn't know they did this. Wow, I didn't know that they actually contributed and invented and came up with the idea of doing this. So I think that will absolutely help America in itself. If I had to rewrite it, that's what ultimately I think I would focus more on an aspect of that. You'd be very, very surprised who did what and how they did it throughout the whole struggle. Throughout the whole struggle, which is very, very hard to do, extremely hard to do. Even our educators, I think someone mentioned that too. Also put that in there too, our teachers, those who helped us in that aspect of it. So I think ultimately, the burden of explaining Black history falls on Black Americans, but I think if the school board had to redo things, I think that's what they have to focus on.
Right, Kenya, and also I see Sasha said, mentioned about educators need to share how Black people lived prior to slavery. That is important. I think, school board, not only just the like college school boards, but also like, K through 12 high schools, such as, Kenya mentioned, having us studying a Black history year round and not just, for the recognition of Black History Month. Providing more context, for how we got to where we are today.
Yes.
And, having a deeper understanding of the issues that we still face in this country today. Just having a deeper dialogue, about how people can work on their internalized racial, oppression is important. And I think that that's how, we can, colleges, our school boards can be able to implement changes.
Yeah, I agree with my colleagues on that. I definitely want to add, we're in a micro learning environment, and so if I'm to say school boards, K through 12, because we're in a micro learning environment, that they would fund the use of young people in order to be able to use the technologies in order so that they can now create Black history moments or STEM moments connected to Black history, and so fund the technology use and give them the space that give them the space in order to be able to use that technology in order to be able to fund those micro learning spaces. If they don't do it, then we have to be able to have, I don't want to depend on school boards in order to be able to do it, because now we have YouTube, we have other opportunities in order to be able to create micro learning sessions for people in order to be able to understand Black history, right? It's not controlled by those districts anymore. It's now controlled by us through those other means. And so, yes, it's in schools, but those of they're interested in it, learning those moments. And now this is what I learned and this is how I see it. And then use the technology, Flipgrid, use those other technologies as a means of being able to get your thoughts out there, right? And to be able to get your ideas about African-American history, but not just the moment, the historical moment, but you got to bring the moment to where it is right now. Because, okay, what did they do during that moment in order to be able to move forward? So we're just not learning it for the sake of learning the micro stuff, because you're learning it because you want a result to happen in the future. So that technology allows you to be able to say, I learned it. This is where I am in my moment. Let's bring this forward, right? So it brings us into like a design thinking space, right? That's who we are. So give young people that opportunity to be able to design things, or if not, the young people need to take it themselves. You don't need us, you don't need permission from us, or you don't need permission from a K through 12 or school board in order to be able to do this. You take the learning on your own, right? And do it by yourself if this is what you're passionate about. But no, in thing, you want a result out of it and understand the result that you want when you start.
So I'm gonna go ahead and open the forum for questions. I'm gonna call on Ms. Abel because I know, well, I'm sorry. I believe Melvin had his hand up first in the chat, and then I'm gonna pass it to Ms. Abel.
All right, thank you so much, Senator Ayana Lovelady. This is really educative and informative. I'd like to comment on the issue of critical race theory. Right now in America, we have 5 states passed the bill banning critical race theory. And we also have about 17 states who have introduced similar bills. Now, the schools still have harsh penalties for defaulters, and these bills do not even mention critical race theory in them, but prohibits the tenets. Like, of course, America is fundamental and systematically racist, issues of white privilege and things like that. Now, how do we as a college, as a state, lead in the advancement of allowing the curriculum to include these discussions? Because I feel that events like this and panels like this, shouldn't only create avenues for us to be informed, but also we should also have the ability to act on information we've received. Now, how do we push policies and support for these and use our community as a sample to other states, to other cities, to other schools, that these conversations could be had, based on the data and the data and the results from how our school handled this conversation? That's my question.
Simple, brother, simple, right? So what you're talking about is big structural change, macro and micro big structural change, and how micro's change impacts macro change. And I'll just use this very simple word. Use community organizing, and then let community organizing go from the grassroots to the grass top. Now that takes on different forms. But the baseline of it is community organizing. It is organizing, right? It's organizing here in the city of New Orleans, and understanding what the power and the depth of the issue is, right? So you're talking about Louisiana as a Republican, in terms of Republican control, dominate states in terms of the voting. So, right, so in order to be able to go up, you just can't throw something on the wall and let it stick, but you got to organize from the neighborhoods in the 7th Ward and the 9th Ward, the 3rd Ward, to organize around that issue of what that is, and then now it makes you be able to go up. So it's grassroots organizing all the way to grass top organizing. It is big, it is huge, it's a big thing, but you're seeing them break it down, right? But that's the kind of the base. At least we go too far in it, but it's going to take a community, it's going to take an organizing like you asking that question and you taking action towards being able to do it. That's how we're going to be able to get at that. And then you grabbing 5 more of your friends, and then y'all do it. Then you grab 5 more of your friends, and then y'all. That's how we're gonna be able to get at being in the opposition to critical race theory. You getting off this thing and say, this is my action steps. How I'm gonna take social action right now. That's how we're gonna get at that. And then connect with your friends in Chicago, connect with your friends in New York, connect with your friends in California. That's how we're gonna be able to get at. That's my thoughts.
Absolutely, Tronn. Thanks, Melvin, for posing that. As I was jotting some things down at which you were asking, I'm saying with Tronn, creating an organization, a community, establishing a shared vocabulary. Identifying race equity, is also important, and integrating, race equity, things of that nature, and having a continuous dialogue about race, and building a community and organization is extremely important. And I think those are some things that we can be able to utilize as we continue to promote and have these, racial policies.
And also, I just want to say that, matter of fact, both Ms. Davis and Tronn Moller put it perfectly. Can't add any more to that. Definitely organizing that. And I can't add one more thing. One more thing is this. In the city of New Orleans, the power structure is there to do what you're asking. In the city of New Orleans, The power structure is there to do what you're asking, plain and simple. It's that once again, as Mr. Thompson and Ms. Davis point out, this community has to come together and push those people. Unfortunately, you have to push those people to do what you're asking.
Yeah, because recently I do have a friend in DLAT who was able to, like what y'all said, have the community, organize the community and challenge the redistricting laws, that actually pose the threat to voter suppression and voting rights of, the African-American community. So I'm really glad that this conversation was held. And of course, I hope that I'm able to organize my friends and, make a lot of impact with what I've learned today. Thank you.
Brother, we're gonna push you on that. We don't want you to tell us you think you can. What we're saying is Black excellence says that you gonna do it once you get off this.
Exactly.
That's
And
what we're saying.
exactly. And you already have the theory of change, and so, putting that into action to achieve a collective vision. And ultimately, we know what the goal is. I think that, you already have that. In addition to your Black excellence of what you bring. So, I am so excited to hear more of what you're doing to eliminate, racial inequalities and improve the outcomes for all racial groups, Melvin. I'm excited to hear more about that.
I'm going to pass it to Ms. Abel. We have about 1 minute remaining, and then we're going to close.
Hi. All I was going to say was the question before the last question about moments of Black excellence. And I got to go back to James Brown, say it loud and I'm Black and I'm proud. Whether I could read, whether I come from money, we got internet now. And you can go and view any of the civil rights movements. Brothers and sisters march together, not just brothers and sisters, but Jews and all nationalities march with us together. And when people are together on one accord for something that is right, we all are human. We all bleed red blood. This is about humanity, not just about the color of my skin. Right is right and wrong is wrong. And when people get together for what is right, we've done it in the past with Dr. King and Jesse Jackson and all those four brothers before there was even internet. Those people got together, they dressed themselves, whether they could read, whether they could write, whether they were a teacher, baker, candlestick maker, whether they owned a home, whether they didn't own a home, but they came together on one accord for what was right. And that's the same thing like the brother just said right before. It's nothing new under the sun. We came together before for civil rights, and I'm sorry that we've taken some steps backwards. The problem sometimes is the family. The family is what holds up America, whether we're white, Black, or otherwise. And sometimes the problems that we're having is we all have to be family, and we all have to stand for what's right. Dr. King and all those brothers, I'm a baby of the 60s. I was able to reap the benefits in the 80s for what those forefathers did for me in the 60s. Some of them couldn't read, some of them couldn't write, but when they went out there to march, they represented. And when I watched those old films of the civil rights movement, they were in hats, gloves, suits. They put on their Sunday best to represent for the future. And I'm hoping I can also be one of those people. I may not pull out the gloves and the hat and all that kind of stuff, but in every situation, I want to present myself where the younger generation will be proud of me, and hopefully I could pave the way for a little something better. Every generation wants the next generation to be a little better than them. And we still have to come together for women's rights, women had to come together. And sometimes we lose that along the way, and we all have to come back together for what is right. And I'm finished.
All right, you guys, we're going to go ahead and close out. And before we do, I'm going to pass it on to Melvin.
All right, thank you so much. I really learned a lot. I'm Melvin Ukebo, the student body president. at the City Park campus, Delgado. And I would love to appreciate Senator Ayanna Loveday for pulling the strings and bringing everyone, the faculty members, and everyone to have this panel discussion. Indeed, it was informative, it was educating, and it was interesting. I learned so much, and I hope everyone did as well. In the same vein of the Black History Month, I'll piggyback on a comment someone made. The question was from Michael Egbert. He was like, can we do as a community, what can we do as a community to keep the bar raised throughout the year, both on a personal level and bringing the message to those that may not understand what Black History Month, why Black History Month is important. So we have two other events, the Student Government Association. We have a cryptocurrency event. Of course, the new financial institution, everyone is asking, what is cryptocurrency? Why should I be interested in cryptocurrency? If you follow the trends to where, money, to how transactions are going, we should know that cryptocurrency is here to stay. So we have an event next week. The date and the location will be communicated on the Delgado platforms on questions on Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, ICOs. So we're having, of course, strategic key personalities, the vice president of Visa Incorporated Crypto Strategy, Chike Ukebu, and we'll have a representative of IBM. And these two people will be our resource persons for those events. So please, if you want to be part of that, just be on the lookout on the Delgado platform. And we have one more event. We need to also celebrate and discuss the involvement of the African American community in the STEM career fields. Of course, we know what STEM is: science, technology, engineering, and math. So we have very amazing events. I really love everyone who was part of this to join us next week as we have these two interesting, important events. Thank you so much for the opportunity and have a good day.
All right, guys. So I want to personally thank everyone again for taking time out to join us for this Black panel discussion. Once again, this was with Inclusivity Committee with Student Government Association and with the Wise Women Center. Just to let y'all know once more, in the Student Life Center, we have 2 art exhibits up right now and information for that. And we also have a scavenger hunt going on today, and it ends tomorrow with 2 prize winners winning a self-care basket as well. For anyone that was here to receive extra credit, please be sure to sign a spreadsheet that is in the chat. And if you need me to repost it, I will. I think I have to repost it. But I will also repost that, or Miss Amy will repost that as well. And then I'm going to pass it on to Miss Amy.
Thank you. I would just like to thank, from Student Life, from Student Government, I would like to thank Mr. Jackson, Mr. Moller, and Ms. Davis for giving their time and their vulnerability to participate in this panel discussion that was so informative and really thought-provoking, which is, I believe, what Ayanna had set out to do. And so thank you for helping make her vision come to light. I would also like to thank Ayanna Lovelady, who dreamt this all up, and also Katarina Lobre, another member of SGA, who helped to do some research and to help kind of get this lifted. And so thank you to those student leaders. And then last but not least, to Ms. Morel from the Women's Center, thank you for helping to get interpreters and to get your colleagues on board and to get faculty support for this. That is so important. And to thank every student and staff and faculty member that attended. This has been an amazing day. And so thank you so much. Ayanna, good job. Thank you so much to our awesome presenters and to everyone who posed really thought-provoking questions in the chat and then also had an opportunity to talk. So thank you so much.
All right, so yeah, that's gonna be it for us, guys. Thank you all for joining today. I really hope you guys enjoyed the conversation that we have, and hopefully you will see us again next year. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Are you gonna do the recording part?